What's up? What's up? What's up? Welcome to episode 35 of Domiciled, the podcast that explores the subculture of truck drivers as well as logistics professionals bringing their stories to the masses. As you know by now, I'm your host, Scott Cleary. And before we kick things off, you know what's coming right down below, purplesquirrel.llc. Check out our favorite colorful recruiting rodent. So Purple Squirrel represents freight agents, freight brokerages, and freight forwarding companies. If you'd like to earn more, reduce your liability, and grow your career, you should have a chat with Ryan Smith, who actually met at BCS last week. Great guy. We were going to do dinner, didn't have the chance. Bosses cracked the whip, said I had to go to the last party, so we didn't get that dinner. But next time, Ryan. But they represent multiple broker and forwarding companies, allowing them to provide you with several career offers. Let them advocate on your behalf. So, Paul, as you can see, he's not here again. He hit me up about 30 minutes ago. He told me to say that this episode is brought to you by Verizon Internet because his whole building's out. So shout out, Paul. I was excited because he's got some big news. He's got some big news he wants to talk about, but that'll have to wait for another episode. But meanwhile, your boy here, Scott Cleary, I was at BCS last week up in Orlando. Just a hop, skip, and a jump for me. Luckily, just drove the old Mustang lady up to. That's what I called her, lady, after Lady Gaga, big fan. But anyways, drove her up to Orlando. Had a time at the Post and Pray Classic. Shout out Trey Griggs for putting all that together. Had a blast, got shellacked by rain starting on like hole number 11 or 12. So it got rained out, but we did get some good footage in. So if, I've been debating talking about this because I haven't made it official yet, and it's just at the very beginnings, but we do have the raw footage from that golf outing, so I will be starting at some point, hopefully sooner than later. It takes a little more logistics than a regular podcast like this, but I will be starting a sister channel that is a YouTube golf channel, just to get some logistics professionals on, just have some fun, shoot the shit, get people to know you a little bit better, let it fly a little bit more than maybe we do on Domicile. Who knows? Still figuring all that out. But got the raw footage. We had great partners. They were awesome guys. Just had a lot of fun. Tyler from over at NAD Logistics, and we also had Ryan Wilson at Matterhorn Insurance. So, two great guys. The cameraman hit me up the day after, like, dude, you had some great guys in the other cart. We had GoPros in each cart. We had two cameramen. We were gonna even have a drone cruising around, but the weather didn't permit. But either way, that would have been a lot of fun. And then it was off to BCS, off to the races, networking, getting to know folks. Saw a lot of familiar faces, got to know a lot of new people, and played some more golf too. Bumped into a guy, Will Kerr. Shout out, Will. How we doing? Bumped into him last night at BCS and ended up playing golf at the Waldorf Astoria the next morning at the end when it was all over. Tough life I lead. But thanks, Revanova, for covering that one for me. But, it's just awesome getting brokers together with carriers. My coworker, Zach, and I participated in a round table where, as tech guys, we sat, and it was almost like speed dating a little bit, but it was only like 2 or 3 times that carriers and other brokers came to our table and just told us about things they were dealing with. And there's a great opportunity to listen. I'm a sales guy. It was nice to just listen and have nothing to sell. That wasn't the intention. The intention was to learn about the folks in the space. And that's really what BCS was all about. We're always there to do business, but bringing the carriers and brokers together is really what it's all about, given they're the backbone of the industry. The carriers are nothing without them, and the drivers. And that actually segues really well into the guests for the evening. So check out Purple Squirrel if you want to become a freight agent, and definitely check out BCS if you haven't done that. So as a driver's first podcast, our next guest is certainly a proverbial feather in the cap for the boys. Again, Paul, wish you were here. Though he's only been in the industry for 5 years, this guy has already made quite the impact on drivers' health through his company Offshift. Recently, he joined forces with Project-61. Shout out Jeremy Raymer. Everybody loves Jeremy. As President and Chief Health Officer. It's a new title, but I like it. It's very much needed in our space. And this will certainly bring Project-61 to new heights and provide a much needed service to the undisputed backbone of our country, the drivers. We can sit here and talk about it as much as we want, but without action, none of it matters. And that's exactly what this group's here to do. So as Bugs Bunny would say, what's up, Doc? Welcome to the show, Dr. Mark Manera. Thanks so much for joining. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Scott. Thank you so much for having me. And actually, I
Oh, my
never
pleasure.
even thought about it. I might be the only chief health officer in the trucking and logistics world. I'm going to
Got to
take
start
that.
with one. Got to
I'm going to
start with
take that.
one.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Did I make up that is your title, isn't it?
That's my
Did I make?
title. No,
Yeah, no, I was
that's
gonna
my
say I
title.
didn't make
Yeah,
that
yeah.
up.
But I never
Yeah,
even thought about that. Yeah, I think I might be the only one. So I'll take it. One and only.
yeah. So I mean, again, you always got to be a first. You're a pioneer. I know that before we get rolling, though, I know that pre-show you told me there's something you really want to talk about that Project 61's doing right now. I participated in it last year. I got to get back involved in it because I was a slacker, didn't get going on it to begin with. But tell us about that. What's going on with Project 61 right now that everybody's got to get involved in?
Well, to give some context, so Project 61 is a 501c3 nonprofit in the trucking industry. And the significance of it, and I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit deeper about it as the show goes on, is that
Oh yeah.
61 number is the average life expectancy of a truck driver. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not okay. It's messed up. I just like deep down in my soul don't believe anyone's career should define their health. But like as I've gotten into the industry, that's exactly what's happening for a lot of drivers. And with Project 61, what we do is we've really tailor created the best health protocols for truck drivers to live a healthier, happier life anywhere they drive out on the road or even at home. And one of the things that we're doing is industry-wide health challenges. These challenges are great ways to get people engaged. They're fun. This industry's sometimes really serious, right? Safety has to be serious. Like it's a life or death at times, but everything does not have to be serious and health doesn't have to be, and you can have some fun. And so what we're doing is we just launched a 61-day step challenge. It's completely free for any trucking company or driver out there who wants to join. It's through our app on their phone. It's called Offshift by Project 61 on any app store. And then we've got 200 trucking companies across the country and
200
thousands of
already.
drivers. Yeah, thousands of drivers who are
Wow.
participating in this. And so things are moving really fast. We'll talk a little bit deeper about it. But again, because of the nonprofit and companies like Revenova and other vendors who have been able to support us by corporate partnerships and sponsorships of the nonprofit, we're able to give these programs and these challenges away to trucking companies and drivers completely for free. And turns out free's the right price for trucking companies.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Especially lately, right? We don't have to get into that today.
Yeah, exactly. With the freight market and everything, but everyone knows that this is a problem, right? And I think the problem that we run into, or the problem I ran into, especially 5 years ago, as I was getting into it and kind of digging into the industry, is companies are like, okay, I got a lot of drivers who need some help, but what do I do about it?
Right.
And we're trying to solve that. What are you do about it with honestly something that's tailor made for the industry. Focus. We always say like we want to smack drivers in the face that we built this for them and their lifestyle and helping them exercise in the back of their truck, helping them eat healthy at the truck stop or any restaurant that they find themselves at, and really just like making the experience fit and tailor wherever they're driving, wherever they stop out on the road.
Absolutely, man. And I participated in the step challenge last year. And like I said, I'm a slacker. I got to get back on it. I walk every day, not nearly what I see some of the people in that app doing. Somebody must have had like a triple shift at a dock or some crazy stuff, plus like ran 10 miles. I don't know. There's people humming with like 40,000 steps in a day. I'm like, I scrape for 8 and I'm a pretty active guy.
But they just put it on their dog.
They just send it on the dog. So, yeah, but no, it's like, I think you brought up a lot of good things that we can unpack there, right? So first off, we mentioned like carriers and their drivers, but shoot, anybody can join. Even if you're in logistics, if you're not in logistics, download the app, like Mark said, check it out, and it's just fun. Maybe you get to meet some new folks, a little camaraderie, maybe, but it's just helping out a good cause. So where do I even start with everything you just mentioned? Like, well, let's first, like, again, you're a doctor, MD. You're in the space.
Not MD.
Not MD. Oh, geez.
No.
Oh, geez.
DPT.
Oh, DPT.
I have a
physical
doctorate
therapy.
degree in physical therapy. And
Okay.
Yeah. But you know what?
Either way.
In the medical health space. And so
Yeah,
my background, yeah, I can kind of share how I got into trucking is like,
please do, yeah, because you're definitely. I mean, you're a doctor either way, smarter than me and most knuckleheads who listen to this thing. So yeah, how did you fall backwards into this space like most of us do?
well, first off, Scott, what I'll say is, the last 5 years in the trucking industry, some of the smartest people I've ever met are actually sitting behind the wheel of a truck, and they just did not want to, they wanted to take their own path in life, and they
100%.
love life on the road, and they are way smarter than I am, even though I have this fancy degree with thousands of student loans that I'm paying back. There you go. So,
right.
but regardless, is I came from the healthcare side of things. Like I said, I'm a physical therapist by trade, and five and a half years ago, something like that, I was working in a physical therapy clinic here in St. Louis. That's where I'm born and raised. And in walked in a bunch of truck drivers. And it was kind of the first time that I had ever gotten to know some drivers on a personal level. I really, no one in my family's in the supply chain. Obviously drove by semi trucks on the highway and probably saw a couple of drivers from, at the truck stop or wherever it's at, but never really got to know people on a personal level until they were my patients. And that was really also the first time I saw what 20, 30 years behind the wheel can do to someone's health. And it just threw me down this rabbit hole. I consider myself a very mission-driven person. And for the first couple of years of my career, I was kind of in that search of like, where am I going to put my focus and where can I have an impact? And when those drivers came to the clinic, it really just like, they stole my heart. And like, I just really dove deep into like, I can help this. I'm a little bit of a research nerd, so I was digging into the statistics on health. And you've got a population of people that have the highest rates of obesity and diabetes among any other occupation.
Yeah.
Compared to office workers, they're 6.2 times more likely to have depression or deal with some mental health issues. And the lifestyle and barriers that they face is really challenging compared to someone who works in a cubicle 9 to 5 every day. And it's just unique, right? It's unique. And I, like I said, just get really close with a couple of the drivers I was working with. One had a total knee replacement that I was rehabbing for a couple of months. Another one had a elbow injury from a work comp issue, and another one had back pain. And just like most down to earth people I've ever met, I could have a good time, but also have serious conversations. And I was just hooked. And through that, just like, I saw this massive problem and I want to be a part of the solution. And so I spent a couple of years in the industry. I say getting my MBA in trucking because I didn't know anything about trucking. So I spent basically worked for free for a couple of trucking companies and just like hung out with them, got to know at the insurance level, worked with a bunch of insurance brokers and like kind of pulled the curtain back at that level to see how they look at drivers' health and from the risk perspective. And then spent hundreds of hours talking to drivers, getting to know them on a personal level. I was the crazy guy at the truck stop doing ride-alongs and hanging out and having conversations. And I actually, I believe I'm also the only physical therapist in the world that between patients, I'm like calling truck drivers all across North America, just like talking to them and trying to like get what's going on in their head, when they're out on the road and understand what they go through on a day-to-day basis. And through that process, really just recognize that, all of the health benefits that trucking companies have available to offer their drivers and drivers have available to use through their health benefits and like employee benefits, they're all industry agnostic. And what that really means is they're built for someone who works in a cubicle, right? And they're made for a lawyer, they're made for a software engineer, they're made for someone who wears a suit and tie and sits behind a desk or a computer all day. And then trucking companies are kind of handcuffed to say, well, I don't want to not give my drivers anything, so I guess I'll give them this. But the benefits don't understand the culture of the industry. They don't speak the language of drivers. They don't fit their lifestyle. And at the end of the day, drivers just don't resonate with them. And when you don't resonate with something, you don't use it, right? And so there's just like this huge engagement problem where like most of these benefits were collecting more dust throughout the year than actual usage. And from a like the statistic standpoint of, hey, let's actually help change that statistic of driver 61 number or any of these chronic disease rates. If no one's using it, no one's getting healthier. And then from a trucking company perspective, looking at like, how do we reduce risk and have an ROI for this cost spend? You're not getting an ROI when no one's utilizing the benefits you're paying for. And so I started a company called Offshift a few years ago, and we built a driver specific program. And so all we did was we focused the whole experience around drivers, helping them exercise, eat healthier, make other lifestyle changes necessary out on the road. And we started selling to trucking companies, getting into more and more trucking companies. And we did that for a couple of years and having a lot of success around that. And then you mentioned Jeremy Raymer earlier in the podcast. Him and I have been friends for 4 years. And you know, we were both at a conference earlier this year and looked at each other. And he had started Project-61 last year as a nonprofit. And we both looked at each other and we're like, hey, we're fighting the same fight here.
Yeah, let's get together.
We're like trying to row the boat in the same direction. We're just in two different boats. Let's hop in the same boat and we can go faster and further together. And so Project-61 acquired my company, Offshift. And really the thesis around that was, let's go all in on making, leveraging the technology we had built with Offshift and making it accessible and completely free for the whole industry through the nonprofit and corporate partners who really want to get behind the movement we're creating.
That's fantastic. So backing it up a bit, you bring up a lot of good points around not only benefits that work for somebody like you or me behind a desk or spend most of our time behind a desk, but also, just the fact that companies in general or people who sell to trucking companies, whether it's insurance, whether it's tech, whether it's whatever it might be, none of it usually has the driver in mind. And even if they say they do, a lot of times the drivers will see right through it. Because like you said, a lot of smart men and women out there on the road, they get a bad rap for it being a blue collar job. But it's like, even if you're a company driver, you need to have a lot of knowledge around your truck. And then if you're an owner op or lease purchase, like you need to know how to fix your own truck. And I can change oil and change a tire. And that's about as far as my abilities go. So just the fact that what you're doing is specifically aimed at the driver and there's no other way for it to be except for the driver because you spent the years at the truck stops, on the ride alongs, calling and talking to drivers, like you said, getting your MBA in trucking. So was there anything that you did outside of doing all this networking with drivers to give them and the trucking companies the confidence that like, hey, this is for your drivers. This isn't just another product that's a line item on your balance sheet. What was there anything, or was there like an aha moment with certain carriers or customers where it's like, no, this really is for the driver and it's gonna work?
Twofold. One being spending the first couple of years getting to know at the driver level and just like trial error until like you just keep iterating in the fact of like, all right, this is like bite size enough and environment. Like the two things that we really recognized was being time efficient, because time's the biggest barrier their drivers face, and then being environment specific. So like I'll give an example of, instead of giving a driver an hour-long workout that they have to find a gym to park their truck at, go find a gym, go in there, do an hour-long workout, hop back in their truck, and then pray to God that they could find truck parking or, still have hours of service to go on. We give them 5, 10, 15-minute workouts they can do in the back of their truck when they're waiting at a customer's to get reloaded, or they are at the truck stop at night, because that's when they have a pocket of time. And instead of scrolling on TikTok, they're doing a 5-minute stretching routine in the back of their cab through the Offshift app. Right. Yeah. And then on the nutrition side of things, so many people hand, someone a huge meal plan and say, hey, flip your whole lifestyle upside down, like go in the pantry, throw everything away. We're starting this massive diet tomorrow. And that's so unrealistic for everyone. But you add trucking into the equation, it's even more unrealistic. And so what we found is small bite-sized habit changes and giving them one thing at a time, then educating them on how to do that at the Love's truck stop or McDonald's attached to it, and then stacking other habits on top of it is the key. And we've had drivers who've lost 135 pounds. We've had drivers who've lost like 10 inches off their waist, like
stupid
massive changes. And the truth of the matter is, it's not typically this huge change. It's typically 2 or 3 habits that they stick with that were massive adjustments. Right. I always tell the story of like one of the first drivers I ever coached 5.5 years ago. He drank 2 12-packs of Pepsi a day while driving. Do you know how much calories and sugar?
Not the zero.
Not the zero. Straight up 40 grams.
Straight up the diesel.
all we did was change him to Pepsi Zero, and the
Yeah.
dude all of a sudden his blood sugar was okay. His
Yep.
he lost. He was still starting to lose weight. He didn't start exercising. He didn't even make any changes to his diet. All he was doing
Yeah.
was cutting the thousands of calories he was consuming through Pepsi.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
And that was it, right? And so that's a
Yeah.
great example of like a small change that can make a huge impact.
And you're 100% correct, right? And it got me thinking about my own journey too. And so for anybody who's listening who either is on a health journey, is wanting to get on a health journey, whether you're a truck driver, whether you're just a knucklehead behind a desk like me, it is, Mark, you're completely correct. It's not change overnight, right? So I have a coach, and I've had a coach for the last 4 years or so. Again, I'm not in a truck, so I was able to make more radical changes quicker, but it was still a lot of stacking those wins. For example, I was always fit in my youth, but when I got a desk job, I gained a lot of weight. But it's not about me. But the point is, there are so many things I do now that were introduced by my coach. Shout out Britt, she's the best. But that I do now that I didn't do the first year or 6 months or whatever. It was literally just here are your meals. This is what you eat now, right? And she never has given me crap about like, hey, I had this off meal here. Like, you know what? Really wanted pizza tonight. Like, there's never like that giving somebody a hard time for it. But like you said, if one thing she said, and I was never a big drinker, but I definitely drank casually or socially back then. She was like, if you could just lose booze, that would make a big difference. So to your point with like, hey, if you went from Pepsi to Pepsi Zero, or like, hey, mix in a water, like it's gonna make a huge difference. And people always say, oh, if I could stop drinking, like, yeah, just like unless you have an addiction, go get help, right? But if you're able to just not drink, like just stop, because I'll die on this hill. It's straight poison, but that's not what we're here to talk about.
It is. Yeah, it is. Yeah. I mean,
It
yeah.
is, and so does poison. I mean, like my one vice is Coke Zero, and another one I won't talk about on this show, but it's not illegal, so leave me alone. But it's just like, everyone's got to pick their poison, right? Everyone's got something. But if you can make those little changes, if you can stack little wins, if you can say, okay, here's a 20-minute workout or a 5-minute stretching routine, and then like, okay, hey, Mark, I've been doing this for 30 days. I'm ready. Give me more, right? Okay, well, hey, here's how you can use bands on the front grill, and you can do like, body weight pull-ups or pull, basically lat workouts or chest exercises, basically presses. You could have it behind you and do presses with your body weight. So like you said, it's just those little things, and there's always a solution. Like for anyone out there, again, if now I'm going down a rabbit hole, but like if you feel like it's helpless, everything feels helpless before you start. You just need action, make little changes, and they'll eventually turn into big ones.
Well, and off of what you just said there is like, as I've gotten deeper into my career, and as a clinician, but then also just like working with thousands of drivers as well, is, the real process that the thing that I've recognized is that like the process of getting healthier is a psychological process wrapped,
Yes.
like disguised as a physical one, right? And
100%.
I think so many people get in their own head and are their worst critic, and the mindset shift and that like identity of like becoming that version of yourself that is in there, but you've got like the devil on your shoulder, just like throwing fear, shame, and guilt into your like every move. And I think the big thing that I've found drivers have had success with is when you get in the mindset of like, I'm going to do this 30-day sprint, right? Having a pizza one night automatically feels like a massive failure and like it's done with. But if you think about making health changes as this is the rest of my life, I'm in my mid 30s or I'm in my 40s, this is the next 40 years of my life. All of a sudden, pizza on a Tuesday is not that big of a deal in a span of 40 years.
Right.
And what people, the bigger mistake people make is that pizza on Tuesday turns into pizza on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, because, and then that's the next 5 years of their life because they're like, screw it, I'm done, I suck. And it's like, no, I eat pizza, you eat pizza, like we don't have to eat
best.
It's awesome.
It's the best.
I love ice cream. Like we can have a treat. Like there's balance here, and
now I'm hungry.
Yeah, exactly. But people make themselves like this, like
all or nothing.
All or nothing in the fad diet culture in our world, and like these like 30-day sprints are just like they really mess with this like the psychology of it. And most of us, once you get into your 30s, 40s, and 50s, have, if you really dig deep, you've got about 10 to 20 quote unquote failures of attempts of getting healthier. And all of a sudden, every time you try, because that's in your subconscious and that's your current identity, it feels like, why am I even trying this? I've already failed. And you need to break through that and get rid of those and reduce that, like that guilt and shame that you have, because that is not your true identity. That's not who you are.
No.
You need to like realize that you've got such a large potential and you've got so much time, and the time horizon needs to expand outside of just the next week, outside the next month, and for the rest of your life.
Right. No, so I mean, that's fantastic. Again, building on that, two things I'll even add to it is we could probably just stay on this topic the whole time, because it's how I live. It's make the next best decision, right? So if you mess up, or if you eat a meal that's off your plan, just make the next best decision. Make sure you get that walk in. Maybe go for a walk right then if you have the time, right? Get your workout in. Make sure the next meal is the right one. Also, the fad diet thing, you're completely correct. And again, some people aren't going to like me for this, but keto for the birds. Like any of these other things, like completely for the birds. Cutting out carbs, basically keto, like for the birds. You need to track, I believe, macros. It's protein, carbs, fat, staying within a similar, a macro range that works for you, that whether you're trying to gain weight or lose weight. And that's how you stay sustainable. That's how it's a lifestyle, Mark. So you're completely correct.
And what I would say to that is, I think that every quote unquote diet strategy can there's a subset of people that this feels great for them, and that's how they live their life, and it can be successful. For example, for me, I've never tracked my macros. It's just something I will not, I don't do it, but I eat the same food every single day.
It works.
I know it works. I lead with, protein and veggies and fruit and whole, and I actually don't go, whole foods. Exactly. Right. And it's worked for me, and I make small adjustments here or there because, I get bored with it every once in a while, but exactly.
100%.
Like, I think you have to figure out what you like and find that balance. And then depending on your goals and your current starting place, there might have to be more dramatic changes than maybe your friend over here or the next person.
And you're right. Everybody is unique. Everybody is different too, because we also grew up. I mean, we talked about the psychological thing. Everybody grew up with different baggage, with different. You can call them traumas, I guess. Like, not to like they're deep or brutal, but like just the whole like the conditions of, hey, finish your meal, right? Like a lot of us grew up with that. So I hate waste. I always finish my food, and I notice that I do it even if I'm a little full. Like I'm getting, I'm not a child anymore, so when I'm done, I'm done. But like, even still, like, I don't like to leave it, so I finish it. And I also don't like disposable doggy bag nonsense that's there for 30 seconds and you eat it later that night anyway. But I digress. So getting over that stuff and realizing like you're not your past, you're not hooked up to that. Like you can change today. And again, it's a day one or just another day, right? So
I think you're spot on there. I was just speaking at the Wisconsin Motor Carriers Association. They had a whole driver health day. It was pretty sick. It was awesome. They brought in all driver health stuff, and that was the example of like, most people who grew up in the Midwest. You're from Boston area, right? Or no?
Yeah, Massachusetts. Yeah.
Okay, you're from Massachusetts. Yeah, maybe it's just the time of culture that we were in. But Midwest, I'm like the middle of 7 kids. We had crock pot meals, and if you wanted seconds, you had to sprint and eat so you could get back to the crock pot before it was done.
Oh,
and like,
shoot.
I still feel that in today's world. Like, I have to slow down, and I feel like I have to finish my food so I don't get yelled at for waste, right? It's completely spot on. I think a lot of people listening can resonate with that as well.
Absolutely. So check your own check your own conditioning from growing up. That's what they are. They're conditions, not necessarily traumas, but like the conditions, what was ingrained in your head as a child when your parents are trying to raise you, or from your past experiences. You can break those. Like, again, you bring a good point too. A lot of us eat fast, right? I've actively tried slowing down and eating quicker. They say drink your food and chew your drink. I've heard that one. That's just really difficult to do. But if you think about it, you chew your food until it's like literally liquid, not to be gross, but like you get more satiated. Your body breaks it down better. And I eat like a pelican. It's like chunks of food just going down the gullet. And they say with your drinks too, like swish it around in your mouth, really taste it. Don't just crush it. So those are all things that we can all work towards. But we could talk tips all day. Tell me what's been like the greatest challenge since maybe since you started this, and then since merging with Project-61, what's been some of your biggest challenges?
I think the biggest challenge for us when we were with Offshift was I'm not sure if you've been to an American Trucking Association conference before.
Not an ATA, a few state ones, but not the ATA.
Okay.
No.
Have you seen Bob Costello
No,
speak?
TMC. I
Okay,
have not
cool.
seen Bob Costello, but I did go to a TMC. I was wrong.
Okay, no worries. Well, he's like the economist for the ATA. And the last
Okay.
conference he was at, he gave like this big talk on the freight market and like the current state of the industry. And he had this chart of when the freight market started and then like the decline of it until like this month. And it was basically like the last 2.5, 3 years, right? And when you look on the chart, I started Offshift on like month 0 of the freight market. And so
Oh my
you start
gosh.
looking at like just the current the freight market that we went into of selling. And when you're in this, kind of area where from an economic standpoint, businesses are like, I'm trying to keep my doors open and keep my drivers moving.
Yeah.
It's really challenging. It's like kind of the hierarchy of need to move up to the higher levels of being able to say,
Good old
let's
Maslow.
focus. Exactly. Right. And so that was a challenge that we had. And it was like really tailoring down of like showing the value of like keeping drivers healthy behind the wheel impacts a lot of areas of the ROI, a lot of areas of the P&L, and creates an ROI from healthcare costs to work comp to even safety and fatigue behind the wheel, turnover risk. We have a lot of drivers who don't have, full 2-year med cards. Some of them who are walking around with three-month cards, and it's scary, right? And we were finding the companies who cared, and we were finding the companies who were trying to solve that retention problem or turnover problem that they have. And with the merging of Project-61, my life became a lot easier because we went from trying to sell to trucking companies to we're giving it away for free, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
now
No, true,
it's like
true.
I go to all these companies who we were trying to sell to, and we're like, hey, no excuse now. Now we can roll this out. And
there
there's
you
no
go.
excuse, right? And so
Yeah.
we're rolling it out. And, I think the bigger piece of it for us is like really nailing down that employee marketing strategy, just because once you get a thumbs up from the safety or HR person, now it's like, how do we really communicate this to the fleet and get it in front of their face, not just
Adoption.
as like one email or one message, because it takes 15 to 20 touch points on Facebook when you're scrolling for you to click on an ad and buy something.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
It's the same way for an employee benefit or a program like this. So it has to consistently be in these drivers' faces, and doing these challenges make it a lot easier because it's like an actionable and like time sensitive thing to be like, all right, join before this starts. And so we're having a lot of success on that end. And then, for me, I've just like really, really, really been so excited about the amount of support that vendors and other people across the industry have had for Project-61. We had a goal for this step challenge to raise $61,000 for the nonprofit, and we just crossed 75,000. We're now moving it up to try to raise 100K for the nonprofit, so we just keep expanding this out and helping more drivers. And it's just been really, really exciting to see like how many people are really bought in on the mission and movement we're trying to create.
That's fantastic. And is that through corporate sponsors? Is that through links like a GoFundMe type thing? Like, where can people find that if they want to donate?
Yeah, it's on our website. So project-61.org. But it's typically companies. We have had some individuals who have donated, and if that's something you'd like to do, that would be amazing. But really, it's been corporate partners and corporate donors who have supported it.
Gotcha. Okay, so all you corporations, fork it forward. You're getting it for free.
Do it.
Help them out. But no, I mean that's so I didn't even think about that. Right? Like you said, you were charging for it. Now it's free of charge, no excuses. But what's interesting is you bring up another good point though. Like everybody's talking about right now, it's like, hey, there is no driver shortage. There is a turnover issue and a issue around strong drivers who've been around a long time.
Quality drivers, right?
Drivers, right? The word that simple $2 word I couldn't come up with. But yeah, the quality drivers. And to your point, it's like that's exactly why when it did cost money, that's exactly why the carrier should have bought it. Because it's like, well, do you want to keep having 100+% turnover? Not that every carrier deals with that, but from some of the folks we talk to, there's extremely high turnover rates at a lot of these carriers. And you see some big ones shutting their doors, and it's a lot of things that are occurring. It's not just driver turnover to do that. But I just think it's tough. And as a sales guy, like when you're trying to convey true ROI, true value, and not all the sales folks are just trying to sling deals. Like there are opportunities where you can say, hey, if I remove this and put this in, or you start doing this instead of that, you can actually, like, hard dollars, maybe you're not saving money, but to this situation, like your drivers will be happier, they'll be healthier, they won't leave, they won't, God forbid, die. Right. So,
Well, Scott,
why not?
one of the pieces, and I always, when I'm speaking at conferences, it's something that I ask every, because a lot of the conferences are carriers, right? It's not the drivers, it's the trucking companies. But, I always ask them, all right, raise your hand if you're a trucking company, and keep your hands up if in the last year you've had a driver pass away who works for you.
That's a good question.
Every single company, every single conference, all of them stay up.
No.
I had a driver manager who came up to me and she looked me in the eyes and said, Mark, in the last year, I've had 6 of my drivers pass away.
And they get close to them. They know them.
Yeah. And in the last one, I found slumped over the steering wheel in the yard after their shift. What other industry is that a thing? Like, can you imagine a hospital being like, yeah, 6 of our nurses have passed away on shift this year? It's like,
yeah,
no, that's messed up. And that's not okay. And I don't understand how the industry is okay with that. And we have to do better. And that's the whole sole point of our movement that we're creating.
No, I love it. And I think, there's a lot of things that point at it. And I think a big one, I'm not pointing at a carriers or owners, but I do think a big piece of it is just overall greed. And the fact that rates are so low right now, mixed with the wonderful capitalism that we have, I just think it's really putting an extra strain. And again, there's many things that go into this, but I guess companies, entities, again, not calling anybody specific out, and I don't pretend to have all the answers here, but if all a company's focusing on is how to expand margin and cut costs, which is businesses exist to make a profit, to turn a profit, but if that's the number one priority, and not like, hey, let's keep the wheels greased so that everything works efficiently, and the wheels being greased is effectively having a good, healthy, safe workplace for not only the folks at the office or maybe outside salespeople, but the drivers. Because I saw a cool infographic, well, maybe not so cool, but if trucking stopped in less than 30 days, our whole infrastructure would completely crumble. Like, we would not have an economy. The USA would cease to exist, and it would be something like, I think it's like 2 weeks we wouldn't have clean water. Just because of, again, people don't think of all the things that occur that are required. Doesn't even mean that like the water plants wouldn't operate. It's just all these other things would happen that would prevent them from operating because the deliveries weren't being made. So we always say this is important, that's important, but every piece of the supply chain is important, but without the drivers, we are quite literally nothing.
Well, and you talked about, we talked about earlier around we have a quality driver shortage, right? And you have these really, really seasoned drivers who are the road team the road team captains. They're the safest people. They've got the best track records, and they're getting older and older, right? And if we're trying to keep them in this industry, and I've know enough drivers that I know it's a lifestyle, and a lot of them don't retire even when they hit their 60s. They want to drive for as long as they want.
They love it,
right?
Yeah.
And if we can help them be healthier and continue showing up to their job at their highest physical and mental capacity, so they can keep driving safely, that driver's going to stay at your fleet for longer, and they're going to, stay there. And that means the safety of your fleet's going to stay up there as well. And then on top of that, you look at the next generation coming up, and you look at how do we create an environment that allows drivers to foster and turn into those safest drivers, or bring the people who are safety minded into the industry. And I can tell you, as someone, and I think we're not too far off age wise, but I think someone in our age bracket is people care about their health, physical, mental. They want to work
a lot more. Yeah.
They want to work for someone, an employer who's thinking about them outside of just where their next load's at. And they want to be cared about as a human. And I think that we're looking in the next 10 to 20 years of trucking needing to adjust, a lot of companies needing to adjust about the culture, and not only the safety culture, but the health and safety culture of their organization, so that they can retain and even recruit this next generation coming in.
100%, man. You hit it spot on, because everybody talks about the good old days of trucking before regulation or deregulation. But that is when people were less health conscious, not as like, we didn't know the impacts of drinking as much as we do, of smoking as much as we do, of eating this horrible food that we allow companies to put in, ingredients that we allow companies to put into our food. Again, different rabbit hole we could go down. But now that there is so much more information available, I do think there are times that as a people, we get a little overexcited about certain things. It can definitely go too far as what's healthy, what's not. Like, nothing's perfect, but just the fact that we have all this information in front of us, and people in our age bracket, 34, not ashamed to say it. It's just a number, right? But no, we're definitely similar ages, and just the fact that it's like cool to go to the gym. It's not like, oh, that's for bodybuilders. It's for lug nuts. Like, no, like, people do that. Everybody should move. Like, to have a lasting life, like, you need to move. If you stop moving, you will quite literally die.
And I feel like crap if I don't.
I mean, at this point, yeah, I didn't realize how crappy I felt. I just thought it was like my stasis. And if you feel like crap on a daily basis, that is just because you're choosing hard. It's hard to work out. It's hard to eat well, but it's also hard to eat like crap and feel like crap and have health issues later. And so, for me, I get up early in the morning. I work out. I have a very flexible schedule, right? Revenova is great to me. I promote sales, but, it's not like I have the life that a trucker does. But not even just talking about truckers, just if you find a space in your day to just take a walk, get some sunshine on your face, at the very least, go from Pepsi to Pepsi Zero, Coke to Coke Zero, no free ads. But, just those little change, back to the beginning, right? Those little changes, just to, like, you will feel better going on that walk. You do get an endorphin rush. It does release, various things, stuff in your, better than I do. It releases dopamine. It releases whatever. It balances out different hormones to just make you feel better and make you healthier. And then you want to do more things that are good for you because you have energy now.
Correct. It's spot on, right? It's spot on. And, I think that one aspect of kind of what you said of, like, I think one of the big myths that people believe is like, well, I don't have enough energy to exercise. And it's like, well, dude, you would have more energy if you exercise. Like, it's the flip.
Yeah.
Like, you go
You
on a
don't
walk,
have it
all of a sudden
because you
you're
don't.
woke.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And I think that is something that, from a standpoint of, like, there's a lot of sleep issues. There's a lot of scheduling issues for drivers specifically. But from a standpoint of, like, having energy, especially being able to have energy on home time where you want to spend time with your kids, you want to recover.
Yeah.
If you're physically fitter, you're going to be there. We had a driver who, on their home time, their normal status was lay on the couch, just chill. And they started in our program, and their son said, "Dad, are you okay? You want to go for a walk? It's Saturday morning.
Yeah.
Don't you want to sit on the couch?" Right. And so it's like, that's a great example of, like, that's life changing, and that's like generational changing as well, because that's an example for your kids. It's an example for your grandkids, and they're seeing that, and the trickle down of that could be generations onward. And then the other piece of it that I think is really important is, from a physical activity standpoint, is like, anything is better than nothing. There's no silver bullet. There's no special thing. There's especially, like, I think in the nutrition world, it gets even more specific. Like, you got to follow X, Y, and Z. But for physical activity, the CDC, like, there's tons of research of, like, 5 minutes of exercise a day can have, even that short period of time, can have health benefits. And so just thinking about, like, you don't have to find an hour of your day. Where do you have 5 minutes? Where do you have 10 minutes? Where are these small chunks where you can get outside, get some fresh air, go for a walk? You can do some stretching. You can do some body weight exercises. We found resistance bands are the best piece of exercise equipment to keep in a truck, because it's super lightweight, it stores easy. And, a 20-pound dumbbell turns into a flying 20-pound if you slam on the brakes too hard.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Well, I know
But,
I actually know a driver who's got a couple kettlebells in his. I didn't think
there
about
you
that,
go.
but again, you can always figure just to secure them. Definitely secure them. Drivers are
Correct.
good at that anyway. But
Yeah.
yeah, definitely the weight and resistance bands. Yeah, that's a very smart move. And you talk about the generational thing. Another great quote I've heard in the past. You say you're willing to die for your kids or die for your family. Well, are you willing to live for them?
Exactly. And I think there's so many drivers out there that they've sacrificed a ton for their family. I mean, and you think about some of the demands that they go through, and I get the mindset as well of a driver, especially OTR, who's out on the road for 5 to 2 weeks at a time, and they're like, well, I'm away from my family, so I need to maximize how many miles I drive. So that I can make as much money as possible. So this is quote unquote worth it to be out here.
Right.
But that's a really short-term mindset. And if you think about it the long term, there's got to be a balance there, right? I get where you need to make your money. I get that aspect. You got bills, you've got financial goals. But if you're not there, example that one of the drivers told me that I really liked was he was telling drivers of like, if you aren't healthy, you're not going to get the ROI back for all the sacrifices you're making. Right. And
don't be a martyr.
Correct. Right. If you're forced out of trucking because your health or you have a medical emergency, or man, God willing, you like someone passes away while in the truck, was that killing yourself on a day-to-day basis worth it? Or could you pull back to 95% of it and spend the 5% just making the small changes that can have, it's the 20-80 rule, right? Of like, these small changes can make a huge difference in your health, and it doesn't take a huge amount of time. And I always tell drivers, like, going down aisle 5 and grabbing a protein bar takes the same amount of time as going down aisle 4 and grabbing a Snickers bar, right?
Yep.
And so there's a lot of things when you focus on being time efficient where it doesn't actually add anything to your day-to-day, but it makes a huge impact when you look 30 years down the road, and that driver picked the healthiest option at McDonald's every time versus the Big Mac, large fries, and large Coke.
Hell yeah. No, exactly. And also, like, again, you're talking about having to get out there, and we create things and make them bigger in our head than they are. And that maybe it's 5 minutes, maybe it's an hour, maybe it's 30 minutes. That's not going to cost you money in the long term. It'll actually, again, it'll probably make you more because you're healthy and you can go longer and you're more alert, you're safer, you can do your job better. So let's take a little bit of a sidetrack here, where let's talk about some of your more interesting stories. Like you said, hey, talk to this driver about this driver about that. Maybe more interesting, or maybe some of this like wild run-ins or experiences you've had in your time in logistics with drivers and working with companies. Whether they're like, again, whether it's like a great success story or maybe like you won't believe this, just anything like that. Let's spice it up.
Yeah, I mean, so like early days, I mean, drivers, like, I didn't know anyone in trucking. So like
who's this guy?
Driver, yes. And so my first, the truck drivers I was in the clinic, they said, hey, if you want to meet other drivers, you got to go on Facebook groups. And I'm like, all right, let me try. My God, for someone not in trucking, trucker Facebook groups are like the Wild West.
They're like, I'm sure.
Oh my gosh, they do not hold back, and they will share their opinion on stuff. And so I'm like posting like, hey, I'm a physical therapist. Will anyone talk to me? I'm just trying to help drivers be healthier. And like the amount of people, like even when I would talk to them on the phone of like company drivers, they would be like, oh, why do I need to exercise? I get all the exercise from the lot lizards at night, or make up stupid things on the nutrition side of things. They're like, oh, I don't eat food. I just, I put I had one driver, and I don't, honestly, this could be true. It sounds like a myth to me. Some drivers are going to tell me this is actually how they did it, but he would say every day he would put a whole rotisserie chicken in the engine and tear it up, and then he would cook it while driving down the highway.
Oh Jesus!
I
never know.
You never know. He did it. He said he did it with beef and whatever. So those kind of things. Those kind of things.
Oh my gosh!
You just laugh and you keep moving on. But the ones that get me is like the stories of like people where like I've built some lifelong friends with trucking. One of the first drivers that I met from this Facebook group was this girl named Blake, and she got into the industry, started driving team about 8 years ago. Her first team driver that she was with, she didn't know him. His name was George, and they like hit it off immediately. Over the first couple of years, they actually like became good friends and then fell in love out on the road. Like I joke, is like
No way.
story. They got engaged. I started working with both of them to help like get prepared for their wedding, help them lose weight, like manage it. And about 2 weeks before their wedding, they were doing the final. They were doing their final drop load at a customer's in California, and I got a text at like 7:45 on a Thursday night, and Blake told me George just had a heart attack.
Oh my
He
God.
was behind the wheel, fully loaded truck on the highway, and turned to Blake, who was in the passenger seat, and said, "I don't know what's going on, but I need to pull over." And thank goodness he did, because he literally was having a heart attack. They had emergency surgery like an hour later. He survived, thank goodness. But it was like one of those first moments for me where it was like, my God, these people are like, this is crazy. Like this lifestyle is like
very real.
From them. It's very real. Thank goodness he recovered well. And my wife and I were 2 of 30 people at their wedding a few weeks later, which was
wow.
Like to kind of talk through like the type of relationship that I've built with some of these drivers, and like I've really, really just embraced, and like they've become really great friends of mine.
That's incredible, man. Hey, thank God George is okay, and I'm happy you were at the wedding. So how do you get, again, outsider looking in, and they're like, kick rocks, I get my exercise from a lot of lizards. How do you gain their trust? Was it just persistence or proving it? Like, what was it?
Consistently showing up and showing them that you get it. And that's what we've found successful, especially within companies, is like, I don't know if you've seen like the bell curve of like 2% early adopters or innovators, then early adopters, and all those. And that's the same thing. There you go. So, I'm more of an innovator. I want an early adopter. I want to try new things. You gotta figure out the marketing. You got to show up consistently. You got to speak their language. You can't send out messaging that sounds like HR talk and like they'd rather watch paint dry than read the email or marketing that you send out. It's like, you got to speak their language. You got to have some fun, and then you got to do it on a consistent basis, and you got to show success stories of other drivers. And when Bob is getting healthier and people are like, dang, Bob looks good, and he's like, he's got more energy. He's like, I always that driver that lost 135 pounds. I tell him he now, when he jumps up in the truck, just like floats up into the truck because he's not carrying. But like when that guy shows up to the terminal, you're like, whoa, what happened to you? Like, I want to do that as well. And then you start getting more word of mouth, and more people start joining. And so this is not a thing that you launch out and 100% of your drivers are just jumping out of their truck, like signing up.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's tough to get regular folks to start exercising, eating better. So I can only imagine somebody who's that busy and frankly, probably a stubborn group, right? Like you said, they're blue collar, they're stuck in their ways. They know what's worked for them so far, worked for them, right? And it's just a matter of like, sometimes one of their folks, one of their kind need to do it, and they see the results. It's like, okay, I'm in. Maybe this guy, Dr. Mark's not so bad. And then, like the flywheel effect, like anything else, right? It takes a lot to get it going, but once it's going, it's humming. So, I mean, that's awesome, man. It's so great, especially too when folks who aren't like trucking backgrounds get into it and make a difference, because you bring a whole new perspective, right? Like, you took the time to understand them, but you brought in perspectives of people who are like, hey, I don't do what you do, but I can see this with a fresh pair of eyes, and I can see where you can make improvements. And that's huge. I think it's huge, right? I mean, I think the more women drivers we get in the industry, it's becoming, more women are getting into it. Driving and logistics in general, the more diverse we can get culturally. If you've just got one type of person doing a thing, you get one train of thought. When you get different types of people, diverse, again, whether it's genders, races, cultural backgrounds, where they're from, you just get such a diverse, rich look into how things can be done. And you just pull the little things that work, get rid of the things that don't for each individual person. And hopefully, I think beautiful things can happen at that point. So we're coming up on time, but do you have one more story for us? Not to put you on the spot, but anything else that really sticks out? First, I have a question that I didn't ask. What caused 30 drivers to walk into your clinic at once?
Not 30. No,
Not 30.
not
I
30.
thought you said
No,
30. Oh, I was like,
no, just a handful of them. No,
we're
just
just
a
here for
handful of
PT. Like we're all like, I
no,
was like,
just
jeez.
a handful of them back
Okay.
back to back to back, where it was just like, I don't know. I think God was sending me a message or something to say, hey, you got to go in this direction.
Yeah.
The last story I would say is
Okay.
we've had a driver. Actually, I don't know if you remember a few months ago, there was a driver who was standing. There was a good video on the news, and it was all over LinkedIn. She was standing. She was a part of America's Road Team, and she was standing with Donald Trump and doing talking about the trucking industry to the world. Her name's Gina Jones. She's a member of Offshift. She's a huge advocate for the trucking industry.
Oh, wow.
And her and her husband have been a part of the program for like 18 months. Her husband is under 290 pounds for the first time in 20 years. They've lost weight. And through our program, and also just like their motivation as over-the-road team drivers, they trained for a 50-mile march to support veterans' mental health. So it was super. I've never done a 50-mile march in my life. I'm like adding it to my bucket list now, but it was so badass of them as over-the-road drivers who you could argue have the toughest schedule and toughest demands of like that truck never moves. And they were able to train for that large or that long of a race and be able to figure out how to be healthier and make these lifestyle choices. And so that's like a cool win, and who can't argue with like helping veterans with mental health as well. So it's a cool thing they were doing it for.
Oh man, I like that very much. Yeah, 50 miles is no joke. Actually,
no.
My coach Britt that I was talking about, she just completed a 50-mile ultra marathon.
Oh, sick.
And in Salt Lake City, so she was going like up mountains and stuff. I'm like, you're freaking insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, so just that kind of dedication, like you said, it just shows. And she never done anything like that. She hated running, hates running. Probably she's like, I don't know if I'll ever do it again. But like if you want to, the body is an incredible adaptive machine. You can do it. You just got to get day one or one day, right? So hey, any other shout outs or last things you want to say before we wrap up there, Doc?
Yeah. If you are a driver, if you're in the trucking industry, like if you are a trucking company or even a vendor in the industry, and like this is something that you can get behind, we are building a community of people. Like this movement is not going to happen with Jeremy and I screaming from the rooftop and just like telling people they need to do more squats and eat healthier. Like this is a community that we have to build, and it has to come from every single angle of the industry. And so conversations like this are huge. Having 200 plus trucking companies that are joining in and more coming in, like this is we're trying to create a no-brainer win-win situation for everyone involved. And as a 501c3 nonprofit, like who can't get behind someone who's trying to give literal like 16 years of life back to the people that keep this industry running? And that would be like, go to our website, sign up for our newsletter, we have a trucker health pledge that is like a great like first way of like getting people engaged and like bought into the mission. And if you're able to, like, we would love to have you as a corporate partner. And if you're a trucking company or driver, we'd love to have you in our program. So go to our website, and it's a great place. You can find all that information.
Awesome. And hey, as a reminder, that's project-61.org. So to everyone listening, please be sure to check out Domiciled every other Tuesday. This one's dropping Wednesday, a little behind, but we'll live. At What's Domiciled on YouTube and Spotify for full episodes, and YouTube and Instagram for the reels. We really appreciate you for tuning in. So, thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe, and have a great day.